Good morning, everybody. We are on 26A3 in the article. The Mishnah had stated, the Mishnah stated that sick people and the ones that serve the sick people are put from the Sukkah. They're exempt from the midst of Sukkah. And the Gemara wants to clarify, explain this law that sick people are put from Sukkah, right? If somebody is sick, let's say a person is sick, we don't say he doesn't have to put on tefillin. Someone is sick, he still puts on tefillin. So what is this? What is this allowance if somebody is sick is put from Sukkah? So also, what type of sickness is how sick is this person that we say that due to his sickness he's put from Sukkah? Say that again. So the question is, if the weather affected him, did that make him sick, or is he sick and by being outside the Sukkah the weather will affect him? What exactly is this case? So the Gemara says the following. Good morning, Jaime.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are on 26A3, the top of the page. The Mishnah has stated that there's certain people that are exempt from a sukkah. We've said a person who's on a mission, shluchei mitzvah, you're involved in a mitzvah, you're exempt from sukkah. And of course, we had certain conditions about that. And now comes the Mishnah said the next thing, if someone is sick, and also the person who serves the attendee of the sick person is also exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah. So what does that mean? What is it? What do you say, Mr. Haber? No, the sick person himself is exempt from sukkah, and the attendant who attends to the sick person is also exempt. So the Gemara says, forgive my voice, I lost a little of my voice. Tana Rabbana, the person that we said that's not well, that's exempt from the sukkah, lo chola sheyesh b'sakana. We're not talking about a sick person who's in danger. And if he's in danger, and by staying in the sukkah, it's going to endanger his health even more. And it could become, his sickness could get worse. Even a sick person who's not in danger, but by being in the sukkah, but the sukkah is causing him the stress that his problem that he has is going to be exaggerated in the sukkah. So that person will be exempt from the sukkah. And the Gemara gives examples. Afilu chosh be'enav. Even if a person has an eye problem, and if he has an eye problem, by being in the sukkah, being outdoors in that climate in the sukkah, it's gonna exaggerate it. He's gonna be much more comfortable in his house, so he'll be exempt. And what's the reason for it? What's the logic? Why are we so lenient? A guy who has an eye problem, we don't say he's exempt from putting on tefillin. We don't say, in the Gemara continues, afilu chosh barosho. A guy has, let's say, a migraine or a type of headache. His head is hurting him. Then we're not going to say because someone's head is hurting him, he's pata from putting on tefillin. But yet, he's going to be pata from going to the sukkah if by being in the sukkah, he's going to be less comfortable by being in the sukkah. And what's the reason for this? So the main reason one of the main reasons that's given is when you live in a sukkah, your sukkah is like your house. You're supposed to live in the sukkah the way you live in your house. If you're in your house and you have a situation, the person is having this eye problem, if by being in this area, he's going to be more discomfort, he would leave his house. He would leave his house to go to a place which is more comfortable for his eye. So your sukkah has to be like your house. So if you would leave your house, if you're uncomfortable in your house due to your situation with someone's eye and his house is causing him problems, he would leave his house to come to a more comfortable place. So your sukkah is like your house. So if you would leave the same way you would leave your house if you have an eye problem, you wouldn't, and if you have a better place, so too, you have a right to leave your sukkah you live in the sukkah the way you would live in your house. If your house you would leave, you have a right to leave the sukkah if the house would be causing problems for your eye, if your house would be causing problems for your headache, for your bad headache. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, I'll read you the language over here that it says, you live in the sukkah the way you live in your house. During the year, a person who's not well will not remain in his house if he finds outside his house a better place that will be easier for his sickness. So too by sukkah, he's not obligated to be in a sukkah if living in the sukkah would be less comfortable than if he would be if living in the sukkah would make him less comfortable and make it and it won't be so comfortable. So the Gemara illustrates this halacha. Amar Reb Shimon Gamliel, Pam achas chashti be'enai b'keseri. There was a time that I had an eye problem. My eye was giving me a lot of problems, and he didn't want. It's interesting. Now here's a big rabbi. You would think that the big rabbi could go ahead and give himself an allowance to say, I'm patur from Sukkah. Is it that because it says, what does it say? They hit the Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi. Rabbi Yossi, who was b'Rabbi. Rabbi means he was like the big rabbi, the head rabbi of the generation. Lishon ani, he gave me an allowance that I, Mishamshi, and the people that attend to me, chutz l'Sukkah, that they could go ahead and stay outside the Sukkah. Because by me staying in the sukkah, him staying in the sukkah would cause, he wouldn't be so comfortable. His eye would be, was hurting him, and being out there would be just very discomfort. So he would, that was an allowance to stay outside the sukkah. Now, why did he have to ask the question? Was it he didn't know the halacha? Or is it that sometimes if someone's very great, sometimes they don't want to answer a question for themselves, even though they might pretty much know that they're allowed to. They want to just be extra, maybe because of their piety, they want to just ask the question to a bigger rabbi, because this is going to be an allowance, and sleep outside a sukkah is a big deal, not to be in a sukkah. And he wanted maybe to make sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that there's no question that this is an allowance that people have a right under such a circumstance. And the rabbi allowed it. Similarly, the Gemara says, Rav Shoril Rav Acha Bardula Migna Bekilta Besukah. A kilta sukkah is like having a canopy. We stated earlier, you can't set up a canopy within the sukkah, because that canopy will, if you make a canopy with a roof, at the top of the canopy has a certain width of a tefach by a tef, if it's, let's say, 3 to 4 inches by 3 to 4 inches, that is like a roof, and that roof will act as a separation between you and the schach. If I can't live within some other structure within the sukkah, but yet the situation was there were a lot of mosquitoes going on in the sukkah, and those mosquitoes were causing him a lot of distress. And the question was, and he was having difficulty going to sleep in the sukkah with all those mosquitoes. So the rabbi, Rav, permitted him to go ahead and to sleep and to create this canopy within the sukkah itself and to sleep there. The obvious question is, why did he need to sleep in the sukkah? If we're saying that if you set up a canopy in a sukkah, it's not a kosher sukkah. It's not, you don't get the mitzvah of sukkah if you sleep within a canopy within the sukkah. So therefore, and he got permission that he could sleep, that he could go ahead and sleep within the canopy within the sukkah. He's not getting credit for the mitzvah sukkah. So you might as well go inside your house and go to sleep in your house under such a circumstance. So why did he go ahead and sleep in the sukkah? So one answer I saw is that even though the halacha is, the main opinion is that you cannot sleep in a canopy inside the sukkah, but there is an opinion out there that says that that's allowed, that's not a problem to sleep within a canopy within the sukkah. So even though the halacha says you can, and now he had a right to, because he had a problem from the mosquitoes, but because there's an opinion that says you actually fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah by being in the canopy, so he wanted to, at least according to that opinion, maybe he is getting the mitzvah of sukkah by creating this canopy within the sukkah. He doesn't need to be in the sukkah at all, because the sukkah is causing him distress, the mosquitoes over there. But just in case he can fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah by being in a canopy inside of the sukkah, so he went that extra mile. That is
but Rabbi, that goes against everything that we've learned up until now. There's so many technicalities that make the sukkah pasul, and the canopy is one of them. And now he's sleeping in the sukkah. Isn't it better that he should just go inside rather than sleep in a sukkah that's pasul?
But in this situation, there is an opinion. Let's say it's a minor opinion that says that if you sleep in a sukkah with a canopy, you still get credit for sukkah. You still get credit for sukkah, for the mitzvah of sukkah. So he had a problem with the mosquitoes. He has to deal with that problem. But at least he's fulfilling the mitzvah of sukkah. At least he feels, at least I'm sleeping in a sukkah. He dealt with the mosquito problem. And according to this opinion, there is an opinion, a minor opinion, you got credit for the mitzvah. So if I could deal with the problem of the mosquitoes, and at the same time you have a mitzvah of sukkah, so that's much better than sleeping in the house. You're right. In practice, we hold you don't get the mitzvah of sukkah. But there is an opinion, there's a rabbi that said the same way, there's a rabbi's opinion that says I do get credit for sukkah. So I rather create a scenario that I get credit for the mitzvah of sukkah.
Rabbi, right now we have a canopy over the sukkah on the terrace to make it weatherproof. So let's say that somebody, let's say it was frigid cold during Sukkot. It was 20 degrees outside. That canopy now will warm up the tent, will warm up the sukkah because it'll contain the heat. But the sukkah is pasul. You can't use it.
Right, but there, your canopy is above the schach, correct? Where is your canopy? Above the schach?
It's above, but it could have been done under.
Right. That's a good point. But we'd have to. You're right, but nobody would sit. You're right. Nobody would sit in that sukkah if the canopy would be underneath. That is correct. But you're saying meaning if it would be freezing cold, and there will be that canopy underneath. There might be an opinion that says you would get credit for the sukkah. That's what you're saying. So maybe would have.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. I never heard. Yeah. I thought it's pasul. It's pasul. It's a waste of time.
Okay, but that's there is one opinion. There is an opinion out there that says. Now we would have to see more what type of canopy that's referring to. What kind of, maybe there are different levels of canopies also. The canopy that you might have on your sukkah might be different than the canopy over here. Okay. First of all, I want to acknowledge Mr. Batesh and Simon and Max that have joined. First of all, we're looking to build and share more. We want to get more people. Thank God we have a nice crowd today, but we want more. We can't be satisfied. When it comes to other areas in life, sometimes people have to be satisfied what they get. But when it comes to spirituality, you always have to want more. I mentioned yesterday that there's somebody from Florida, from Miami. I learned with someone from Miami the other day, and he was telling me how hot it is during the holiday of Sukkot. And in a certain sense, it could be similar to the mosquitoes. That the question is, people who living in Florida, Miami for Sukkot, I might not recommend going to Miami for Sukkot. Why not? because if it's so hot, he said, it's so hot, it's so unbearable. So being in the sukkah, sometimes they only spend a short amount in the sukkah because sometimes the heat is so bad.
But Rabbi,
really,
you could say the same thing for Chicago. If it's too cold in October to sit in a sukkah, what do they do? Same.
Right. So really, you're right. So really, what people are supposed to do, what people are supposed to do. This guy told me, his name is David Mann. He told me that there are 2 people in his neighborhood that have air conditioners in their sukkah in Florida. But like Simon said, these people are supposed to invest in an air conditioning for their sukkah. And if it's in Chicago, they're supposed to have heaters. I recall Rabbi Heinemann in Baltimore. I think I remember seeing a heater in his sukkah. He had a heater, because that's going to allow you to do the mitzvah. Without you might be exempt. They might if you're so uncomfortable in the sukkah in such a situation. I mean, so people, it's something to think about. Something people need to make themselves. You're supposed to make your sukkah like your house. To be comfortable. Now, Rav, now the next thing in the Gemara. Rava Shirley Rav Acha bar Ada, Rava permitted Rav Acha bar Ada lemidnei bar mitaltala to sleep outside the sukkah mishum sircha de gagishta, because they spread certain type of sand on white sand that was spread on the sukkah floor, and that white sand that they put on the sukkah floor gave off a bad smell. So really, the halacha says that you're not supposed to create a sukkah that you're going to be uncomfortable in a sukkah. You can't do that. But he was a guest in this person's house. The people in the house were not sensitive to the smell. It didn't bother them. But he was much more sensitive, and he was much more distressed. This smell really bothered him, and he was very uncomfortable being there in the sukkah. So he wasn't able. So he asked the rabbi, "What do I have an obligation to stay in the sukkah or not?" And again, he himself. It's interesting. He did not give. He asked the rabbi. The rabbi said, "You are permitted to sleep outside the smell, which is causing the smell, which is done by the sukkah, which is causing you the distress." Comfort is a big factor in a sukkah, and we'll have to look more. The commentaries do talk, Jaime, about cold climates and these type of things, because if you're going to use this idea of cold climates, you could exempt the people from Chicago, and we don't see people in Chicago don't have to sit in the sukkah. So there is discussion about this, but we do see that there's some other elements here. The Gemara's not talking about cold or hot. What the Gemara talks about, rain could exempt you from the sukkah that we found. Now we found mosquitoes, having a lot of mosquitoes that are causing you a lot of discomfort could cause you exempt from the sukkah. The foul odor. We have many cases that are causing that because you need to live there the way you live in your house. In your house, you will not stay in your house if there's a foul odor.
But Rabbi, if you could rely on this canopy underneath exemption, you could fix all those problems: heat, cold, mosquitoes, everything.
Right. So obviously, the halacha does not allow, like you said before, to put a canopy underneath you. But if someone, if in the case when a person is exempt from a sukkah, then you want to go on in the canopy. So then, you're exempt anyway. You just in case you want to fill that opinion. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Rava l'tameh. Rava goes according to his reason, right? We are on 26 bottom line. You got it, Max? 23 the bottom line. Rava l'tameh. Rava goes according to his mitzta'er potem min hasukkah. Rava went on record and he says discomfort, which is discomfort is coming from being in the sukkah, a person from sukkah. And now the Gemara questions big chidush, right? Like Mr. Haber is saying that regarding sukkah, the discomfort. Rava, you're saying discomfort exempts someone from sukkah? We only found in the Mishnah if someone is sick, he's exempt from sukkah. sick. But where do we find we find the Mishnah that says, the sick person, the person who is engaged in helping the sick person. So you could say, some explain that osik b'mitzvah potem min mitzvah. If the person who's attending to the sick person since he's attending to him, he's involved in a mitzvah. Like we have, if you're involved in a mitzvah, you're exempt from the other mitzvah. So I can understand that the people the attendants are potter from the mitzvah. But you're telling me that the sick person doesn't have to go to the sukkah. And only because the person doesn't go to the sukkah, he's exempt, and therefore his people also attending him don't have to go to the sukkah. So cholin in, we only see that the Mishnah only said that a sick person is exempt from the sukkah. Mitzvah low. But we didn't find that a person who's in discomfort, that's exempt from the sukkah, for the discomfort of whatever the discomfort might be. So how do you create a lower bar than the Mishnah? It's a great chidush. It's a great novelty to extend the exemption. Who's exempt from this tax, right? We're going to include A, B, C. Not only who's exempt from this great opportunity, right? It's not a tax. Mitzvah is not a burden. Who's exempt from this great mitzvah of sukkah? Not the Mishnah only stated a sick person. So how could Rava say, if it's true, like Rava, that someone with discomfort is exempt from sukkah, so the Mishnah Adam should have said the bigger chidush. Someone who's a discomfort is exempt from sukkah. Certainly a person who's sick and being in the sukkah he's both sick and will be uncomfortable in the sukkah. The Gemara says, Amri, we defend Rava's position. Hola, if someone is sick, someone who's sick, he and the people that attend to him are also exempt from sukkah. However, but when it comes to someone who's a discomfort, the only one who's exempt from the sukkah is the one who is in discomfort. But the attendees of the person who's in discomfort will not be exempt from the sukkah, because maybe it's not called. So now we'll see what the reason for that is. When you're attending someone who's sick, then that level of someone who's sick, that's really a level of mitzvah. So some explain helping the person who's sick, that's a real mitzvah. That's a level of a mitzvah that you would exempt you from going into a sukkah, because the person is sick, and the person who's sick cannot be in the wad in the sukkah, because the sukkah is causing him discomfort. So therefore, because he can't be in the sukkah, and if you need to be, and you help him out, so that you're helping someone who's sick, the morning Morris, that will exempt you from the sukkah. But helping someone who's in a discomfort, it's a beautiful thing. You help someone who happens to be in discomfort, but he's not sick. He's in a level of being uncomfortable. That level of helping is not enough that you're involved in that level of a mitzvah, that you could call it that you're involved in a mitzvah that should exempt you from the mitzvah of sukkah. That's what, and you are right. That attendant would have to stay in the sukkah whenever it's time to eat, whenever it's time to sleep. But of course, when it's not time to eat, you can go out of the sukkah and help that person who's in discomfort, not that he's in any danger, not that he's sick in any fashion. That is one approach of the difference between the attendee. But the guy who's discomfort is exempt from the sukkah. The guy who's in the discomfort, the people that are attending him have no discomfort by being in the sukkah. Its only question is, because they're attending to him, would we say that he doesn't have to be, that they don't have to go to the sukkah, right? So now we're saying only the guy whose discomfort is exempt from the sukkah, but his attendees are obligated in the sukkah. So that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, Amri, chola hu mishamshav peturim. A sick person, he and the people that attend to him are exempt. But the guy who's in discomfort, hu patur, he is exempt. U'mishamshav, but the mishamshav, lo, anat potur. So the Gemara discomfort would be the mosquitoes will bother you. The smell of the smell of the floor. If you put something on the floor that's causing you, that's a discomfort. So you who have that discomfort, you are exempt from the sukkah. But the people that are there to attend to you, they will not be exempt from the sukkah. Now, you see the way one of the commentaries say, Simon, to address your point, that when a person attends to a sick person, it's normal that a person will leave his house to help a sick person because the sick person needs him. Therefore, during the holiday of Sukkot, you're allowed to leave the sukkah the same way we treat the sukkah, like the way you treat your house. If you would leave your house, you have to live in the sukkah, right, Adam? The way you live in your house. If you would leave your house to help a person who's sick, so too, you can leave your sukkah to help a person that's sick. But a person who is in a certain amount of discomfort, it's not so common. It's not a common thing that you leave the house for someone who's in discomfort. A guy like you, Simon, maybe a person like you, not a guy. You're not a guy. You're a real person. I don't call people like you a guy. But if a person leaves, since a person doesn't use, it's not common that a person leaves his house to help someone who's uncomfortable. If someone's uncomfortable, he deals with this uncomfort generally himself. He doesn't get, therefore, since that's the case, the person doesn't really need him so much. Therefore, you're not allowed to leave the sukkah also to go ahead and to take care of that person who's not comfortable. And therefore, whenever you have when it's time to eat, time to sleep, you should be in the sukkah. But of course, when you don't have sleep, when you're not eating, go help the guy who's not comfortable. But it's not an exemption. It's not enough to exempt the attendee from the sukkah. That addresses your point, Mr. Simon? Okay. We are on 26A3 on the bottom. The Mishnah stated that you could eat a temporary eating outside the sukkah. That means not a permanent type of meal. And now the question is, it's interesting. The Mishnah stated you could eat and drink temporary outside the sukkah. That's what the Mishnah stated. Now the Gemara is going to explain the halacha of what's called the temporary eating. It said you could eat a temporary eating outside of sukkah. What's called temporary? What's called a permanent eating? Now, when it comes to fruit, as much fruit as you want, you can eat outside of sukkah. Fruit is not something that's called a permanent type of eating, even if you eat a basket of fruit, a pound of grapes. It's not called that you ate. It's not a permanent eating. So we're talking about bread. We're talking about mizonot. Let's say that's how we could. We're talking about bread and mizonot for now. That's how we'll explain it. We do know there are some opinions that say that mizonot, if you have a meal of fish, a meal of fish or cheese, also should be in the sukkah, but that's not how the Shulchan Aruch for the Sfardim paskin. Eating a sukkah if they're having a bread meal or like a mizonot meal. Foods. So now the Gemara wants to know what's called a temporary type of meal. Kama achilat aray. Omar Rabbi Yosef says, Tarte utlat bei, either 2 or 3 eggs. I mean the size of 2 eggs of bread, or the size of 3 eggs of bread. That's called a temporary meal. So the obvious question is, is it 2 or is it 3? You know, if I'm asking you for a size of what's called a temporary meal, I can't tell you 2 or 3. You know, if 2 is a temporary meal, then 3 is a permanent meal. So how can you say 2 or 3? So there is the question is, there's a general question, what's called a set meal when it comes to bread? What in general, what's called a normal meal that's a meal that's an average set meal by bread? And there are two opinions. One opinion says three eggs is considered a real meal. And one opinion says 4 eggs of bread is considered, for us, our purposes, an egg is, let's say, we'll say around 2 ounces. So 3 eggs is 6 ounces, 4 eggs is 8 ounces. So according to the opinion that says that a real meal is 4 eggs, so therefore that's the opinion that the Gemara is now saying. According to that opinion, a real meal is 4 eggs, so a temporary meal is what? 3 eggs. And according to the opinion that says that a real meal is 3 eggs, so then a temporary meal is what? 2 eggs. So that's what the Gemara is saying over here as well, that the two opinions of the Gemara, 2 or 3 eggs is a temporary meal, is dependent on that dispute on what a regular meal is. So that's what he's using as the measurement for a temporary meal. Abaye challenges Rabbi Yosef's interpretation. Amalei Abaye. Well, Zimnas Agian, many times a person, having this amount, having 2 eggs satiated. So there, for them, it's really having a real meal. It's true that there are times, so the fact that many times having 2 or 3 eggs is considered people are satiated. So Abaye's challenge is that you have to look subjective to each person. You have to say if you can eat a temporary meal outside of Sukkah, but if many people, individuals, that a temporary meal is 2 eggs is not called temporary. So how could you just go ahead and say 2 eggs is good enough? Or some people 3, right? Let's say we had 2 or 3 eggs. For many people, 2 eggs is 4 ounces of bread is a full meal. So that's his challenge that he's asking. So Ella Amma Abaye. So Abaye said, I have a different size. I'm not giving the guy 2 or 3 eggs to eat outside the sukkah. Rather, by the way, halachically, we give him up to about an egg outside the sukkah. That's what, but we're going to, that halacha is developed from this, we'll see the Gemara. So the Gemara is Elam Abaye, Kitayim bar beirav v'ayil, that the students, after they were daven in the morning, they were pre-shachrit, and they're going to the Beit Midrash, and they're concerned that maybe there's going to be a long class, a long lecture from the rabbi. So what do they? So they want to eat some certain amount, just to hold them over to that they shouldn't be starving, so to speak. So that is considered a temporary type of meal, and that is about an egg size. That is the halacha. The halacha is that a person could eat up to an egg outside the sukkah. That's what that would be. That's called a temporary type of eating. I mean, I don't recommend. I mean, also there's a question: is exactly what is the size of an egg? But in general, what we do is we refrain from having. Generally, we try not to have any bread outside the sukkah. So that's called a temporary eating. A small amount, just to taste a little bit. As Rashi says, when they go to the Beit Midrash, they taste like they fill their mouth and they drink. And it sounds like to fill your mouth with bread, like one filler of mouth. It sounds like with bread is about the size of an egg that they fill their mouth in. They fill their mouth with, and therefore that is the temporary. That's like to go. You're eating like a fast something to go. You have a little snack or something like that. You have a little, they snacked on bread. You know what I'm saying? They snack, if you want to, when they were snacking on bread, they would just, fill your mouth, boom, and then run. Now, Tana Rabbana. Now the Gemara is going to discuss the responsibility of sleeping in the sukkah, which we're going to see that the laws of sleeping are even in certain areas stricter in some way, sometimes, than eating. We know in practice today, not everybody's sleeping in a sukkah because of the discomfort. That's one of the reasons for staying. Because in the cold climates, it's difficult to go ahead and it might be very uncomfortable. In Israel, most people I think are sleeping in a sukkah in Israel. The climate is much better during the holiday of Sukkot. But in America, many people sleep outside the sukkah because of the uncomfortability at night. But we're going to see, amazingly, regarding in a place like Israel, or in a place where the climate is very good to sleep in the sukkah, we're going to see in a certain sense it's going to be more stringent. We'll see. You can't sleep a temporary sleep outside the sukkah. So Amar Rav Ashi says, what is the reason? What's the reason that we're more strict when it comes to sleep than when it comes to eating? We said when it comes to eating, we said you could eat a temporary eating outside the sukkah. But yet when it comes to sleeping, we say you can't sleep a very short amount, small amount outside the sukkah. What's the reason? Amar Rav Ashi says, Zera Shema Yeradin. The problem is, he says that if you're going to sleep a small amount outside the sukkah, you might come, once you're sleeping, you're sleeping. It's very common that you will sleep a little bit, then you're going to fall asleep for the night. And you'll be, if you take a nap outside the sukkah, he says the concern is the nap will turn into, the next thing you know, it's an hour later. It's no longer, or whatever it is, it's much later. It's no longer, like a lot of times a person sits on the couch, before you know it, it's 2:00 in the morning, you didn't realize you just fell asleep. I said, I was only taking a little whatever, that turns into something. Therefore, in order to prevent, because again, the same way, and sleeping outside the sukkah would be a violation of the mitzvah of sukkah. If you were, let's say if a person, according to the way we're holding now in the Gemara, that sleeping outside the sukkah, if you sleep a permanent sleep, it's forbidden. We want to protect the permanent sleep, so therefore we forbade the temporary sleep. If they would sleep a permanent sleep, they would be in violation, because you're supposed to act in the sukkah the way you act in your house. The way you act in your house, you sleep in your house. So if you were sleeping in the sukkah, let's say if you were sleeping outside the sukkah, you're violating the mitzvah of sukkah. You're not living in the sukkah the way you're supposed to in the sukkah. The Torah doesn't say 7 days eat in the sukkah. That's not the language of the Torah. The Torah says 7 days you should dwell in a sukkah. But Sukkot teshvu shivat yamim. And if you're sleeping out of the sukkah, you're not dwelling in the sukkah for 7 days. So therefore, it will be a violation. So anybody who's sleeping outside the sukkah, needs to know why they're sleeping outside the sukkah. What's their allowance? Some have more allowances for married people to sleep outside the sukkah. There's more allowance for them. But everyone has to look into their own halachic question about sleeping outside the sukkah. I want to wish everyone a beautiful day and have a beautiful crowd, and look forward to continue tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.